This video will get millions of views," Zola declared, aiming her smartphone's camera at the old gardener working by the poolside. Her plan was simple: push her father's primitive gardener into the pool and get famous on social media by mocking his humiliation. But as she pressed the record button, she had no idea she was actually starting the film of her own public disgrace and the birth of an unexpected hero. The Okoro estate was a sprawling paradise of wealth on the outskirts of Accra. The centerpiece of the estate was the infinity pool, a shimmering sheet of blue that seemed to spill directly into the lush Ghanaian landscape. It was around this pool that Zola, the billionaire's daughter, held her court. She and her friends, a circle of beautiful, bored, and endlessly wealthy teenagers, spent their days lounging on designer chairs, scrolling through their phones, and searching for the next fleeting distraction. Their currency was not money, which they had in abundance. It was likes, shares, and viral fame. Their target for today was Samuel, the estate's head gardener. He was a quiet, dignified man in his late 50s, with hands as tough as tree bark and a gentle spirit. He had worked on this land since before Zola was born, transforming it from a wild bush into a breathtaking masterpiece of tropical flora. He spoke to the orchids as if they were his children and knew the name of every bird that nested in the baobab trees. He was a man of the earth, a creator of beauty. To Zola and her friends, this made him an object of ridicule, old, dirty, and utterly irrelevant to their glittering digital world. "Look at him," whispered a girl named Tasha, zooming in with her phone. "He's actually talking to the flowers. How pathetic." "He's a living fossil," added another boy, Kofi, without looking up from his own screen. "My dad says we should just automate the whole garden with sprinklers and robots." Zola watched Samuel gently prune a hibiscus flower, a look of serene concentration on his face. She felt a familiar surge of irritation and contempt. His quiet dignity felt like a judgment on her own restless, empty existence. "A fossil is right," she said, a cruel idea beginning to form in her mind. "And fossils belong in a museum or at the bottom of a pool." Her friends looked at her, their boredom momentarily replaced by a spark of malicious interest. "What are you thinking, Zola?" Tasha asked, a sly smile spreading across her face. "I'm thinking our social media has been boring lately," Zola announced, standing up. "We need something real, something raw, something viral." She pointed her chin toward Samuel. "The plan is this. Tasha, you call him over to the edge of the pool. Say you dropped an earring in that big fern. Kofi, you and I will film from 2 angles. When he's leaning over, looking for the earring..." She paused for dramatic effect. "I'll give him a little push. We'll get his epic splash, his stupid, confused face. We'll add some funny music. It will be brilliant." The group erupted in cruel giggles. The thought of the old, serious man flailing in the water, his work clothes soaked, was the most exciting prospect they had had all week. There was no thought of his safety, no consideration for his feelings. He was not a person to them. He was a prop. As they finalized their plan, a shadow fell over them. It was Zola's father, the billionaire Chief Okoro, walking towards his outdoor study. He was a formidable man who had built his empire from nothing. He saw his daughter and her friends snickering and aiming their phones at his gardener. He stopped. "Zola," he said, his voice a low rumble of authority. "What are you doing?" "Nothing, Daddy," Zola replied, quickly hiding her phone. "Just having fun." Chief Okoro's eyes narrowed. He looked at Samuel, who was now carefully watering the orchids, oblivious to the plot against him. "Be respectful of that man," he said, his gaze returning to his daughter. "He has more character and history in his little finger than all of your friends combined. Do not mistake his silence for weakness." He then walked away without another word. Zola just rolled her eyes. "History? He's a gardener," she scoffed as soon as he was out of earshot. "What a boomer." Her father's warning, meant to instill respect, had only strengthened her resolve to carry out the prank. The party began an hour later. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and dozens of wealthy teenagers were scattered around the pool. It was the perfect chaotic backdrop for their plan. Zola gave the signal. The cameras were rolling. Tasha, putting on a fake, panicked expression, ran toward the gardener. Uncle Samuel, Please, you have to help me. My mother's diamond earring. I think it fell into this giant fern by the pool. Samuel, his brow furrowed with genuine concern, put down his watering can and walked towards her. Show me where, my child. We will find it. He knelt by the edge of the pool, his back to the party, and began to carefully part the large fern leaves, searching the soil for an earring that didn't exist. This was the moment. From behind a large sun umbrella, Kofi had a perfect wide shot. Zola, filming in close-up, moved silently and swiftly behind the unsuspecting man. She approached him from his blind side. A malicious, triumphant grin spread across her face. She looked directly into her own camera, winked for her future audience, and then placed both hands firmly on the small of Samuel's back. The fire that fueled her boredom was about to be unleashed in a single, cruel push. The world seemed to slow down for a fraction of a second. Zola's malicious grin was reflected in the pool's shimmering surface as her hands made contact with Samuel's back. The push was firm and decisive. For a man of his age, caught completely off guard, it was impossible to resist. He stumbled forward with a cry of surprise, his body tipping over the edge and hitting the clear blue water with a heavy, ungraceful splash that sent waves sloshing onto the expensive tile patio. For a moment, there was a stunned silence. Then, it was broken by a roar of laughter. Zola and her friends howled, clutching their sides. Tears emerged streaming down their faces. Their phones were held high, capturing every second of the hilarious prank. They zoomed in on Samuel as he surfaced sputtering, his simple work clothes soaked and clinging to him, his face a mask of shock and confusion. For them, the video was golden. The likes and shares were already flooding their imaginations. Did you get that? Zola shrieked at Kofi. Did you get his face? Priceless. But their victory lap was short-lived. As the laughter began to subside, they noticed something strange. Samuel wasn't flailing. He wasn't panicking or crying out for help as they had expected. After the initial shock, a profound and unnerving calm settled over him. He treaded water effortlessly, his breath steady. The confusion on his face was replaced by an expression they had never seen before, a cold, piercing anger that seemed to cut right through them. He just floated there, watching them, his silence more intimidating than any shout could have been. It was at that exact moment that the real drama began. Kofi, the arrogant boy who had called Samuel a fossil, had been showing off at the deep end of the pool, trying to impress Tasha with a series of dives. Laughing at Samuel's plight, he attempted one last, cocky flip. As he hit the water, a sudden, searing pain shot through his calf. A severe cramp. His leg seized up, instantly rigid and useless. He tried to laugh it off, but panic quickly took over. He couldn't kick. He began to thrash, his arms beating wildly at the water. "Hey!" he gasped, his voice tight with fear. I can't move my leg." His initial struggles looked like part of the show, and some of the partygoers chuckled. But then his head went under. He came up again, choking, his face now a mask of pure terror. "Help!" he sputtered, swallowing water. "I'm drowning. Help me." The party's loud music suddenly seemed to fade away. The laughter died. Everyone froze, their smiles turning to expressions of horror. The poolside gathering of confident, wealthy teenagers became a crowd of helpless, panicked onlookers. The designated lifeguard was at the far end of the vast pool, his attention diverted by a conversation. Kofi went under again. Then a blur of motion. Samuel, who had been silently treading water, took action. The transformation was instantaneous and breathtaking. The slow, deliberate movements of the old gardener were gone, replaced by the explosive power of a trained athlete. With a powerful kick, he surged through the water, his arms cutting through the blue with a speed and efficiency that was mesmerizing. He wasn't just swimming, he was commanding the water. He reached the thrashing, panicking Kofi in a matter of seconds. Kofi, in his terror, tried to grab onto him, to climb him, a classic move that drowns many would-be rescuers. But Samuel was prepared. He expertly ducked under Kofi's flailing arms, surfaced behind him, and secured him in a professional cross-chest carry, immobilizing him while keeping his head above water. With one arm holding the now choking boy, Samuel began to tow him toward the edge of the pool. His kicks were powerful and steady, propelling him through the water with an ease that defied his age and his waterlogged clothes. The crowd watched, completely silent, their mouths agape. They reached the edge, and hands finally reached down to pull the terrified, sputtering Kofi out of the water. Samuel, his duty done, hoisted himself out of the pool in a single, fluid motion. He stood there, dripping on the expensive tiles, water streaming from his worn clothes. But he no longer looked like a humble servant, soaked and disheveled. He looked formidable, powerful. The silence of the crowd was a testament to the sheer force of character they had just witnessed. Zola and Tasha were still standing in their original spots. Their phones were still in their hands, but they had long stopped recording. The malicious grins were gone, replaced by pale, slack-jawed expressions of disbelief. The video they had intended to be a viral joke about an old man's humiliation had just become the undeniable record of a true hero saving the life of one of their own. Their prank had not just failed. It backfired in the most spectacular and humiliating way possible. Samuel stood up to his full height. He calmly walked over to where Kofi was coughing up water, checked his breathing, and then turned. His eyes scanned the crowd of shocked faces and landed directly on Zola. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His gaze was heavy with a cold, profound disappointment that was more damning than any accusation. It was the look of a man who had been grievously wronged, but who had risen above it with a grace they could never comprehend. The power dynamic on which their entire world was built, the power wealth of youth of social status, had been completely and irrevocably shattered by the quiet dignity of a gardener. Samuel's silent, judgmental gaze held Zola captive for a long, agonizing moment. Then, without a word, he turned, walked over to Fern where Tasha's non-existent earring was supposedly lost, picked up his watering can, and calmly went back to his work tending the orchids, as if nothing had happened. His complete dismissal of them, his refusal to even acknowledge their prank with anger, was the most profound humiliation of all. He had not only saved a life, he had risen so far above their petty cruelty that they had become invisible to him. The party was over. The music died, and the guests began to leave in awkward silence, whispering amongst themselves. The viral video they had planned had become a toxic secret. Zola stood frozen, her phone feeling like a lead weight in her hand. The recording was still there, a perfect, damning document of her own monstrosity. She saw Tasha and her other friends looking at her, not with admiration, but with a new, fearful respect for the man they had mocked. In their shallow world, power was everything, and they had just witnessed a display of power that had nothing to do with money. Just as she was about to delete the evidence, a calm, authoritative voice cut through the air. Zola. It was her father. Chief Okoro stood on the terrace of his study, having witnessed the entire event from his window. His face was unreadable, a calm mask that Zola knew from his business dealings meant a storm was brewing underneath. "Bring me your phone," he said. It was not a request. Trembling, Zola walked up the steps and handed him her phone. He didn't look at her. He simply took the device and said, "Go to the library. All of you." He gestured towards Tasha Kofi, who was now wrapped in a towel, shivering from more than just a cold, and the rest of their inner circle. They gathered in the vast, silent library, a room lined with books none of them had ever read. Chief Okoro entered and placed the phone on his large mahogany desk. He then called for his head of security. "Bring Samuel here, please." A few minutes later, Samuel entered. He had changed into dry, clean work clothes. He stood with a quiet dignity, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression neutral. He did not look at Zola or her friends. Chief Okoro looked at the group of teenagers. "I believe you have something to say to this man." Silence. They shuffled their feet, unable to meet Samuel's gaze. "Perhaps this will help you remember," Chief Okoro said. He tapped the phone, and the video began to play on a large screen hidden behind a painting on the wall. They were all forced to watch. They saw their own laughing faces, heard their own cruel jokes. They saw Zola's triumphant wink to the camera. They saw her push the old man into the pool. Then they watched in horrified silence as the scene shifted to Kofi's desperate struggle, his cries for help, and finally, The incredible, swift rescue by the very man they had just tried to humiliate. The video ended with Samuel standing over them, dripping and silent, a figure of immense moral authority. The room was deathly quiet. The video had stripped away all their defenses, leaving only the ugly truth. "I will ask you again," Chief Okoro said, his voice dangerously soft. "Do you have something to say?" Kofi was the first to break. Tears of shame and gratitude streamed down his face. He stumbled forward and fell to his knees before the gardener. "Uncle Samuel," he sobbed, I am so sorry. You saved my life. I am so sorry for how I treated you. Please forgive me." One by one, the others followed, murmuring their own ashamed apologies. Finally, only Zola was left standing. Her father's cold eyes were fixed on her. With a choked sob, she too knelt. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Samuel listened to their apologies in silence. When they were finished, he looked not at them, but at Chief Okoro. "Chief," he said, his voice calm and steady, "children sometimes do foolish things. The boy is safe. That is all that matters. If you will excuse me, the orchids need tending before the sun sets." And with that, he gave a slight bow and walked out of the room, leaving them in the wake of his immense grace. His forgiveness was, in its own way, a final, crushing verdict on their character. After he left, Chief Okoro turned to his daughter. "You are grounded for the rest of the year. You will have no car, no allowance, and no parties. Your phone is mine, but that is the least of your punishments." He continued, "Every weekend, from now until I say otherwise, you will work with Samuel in the gardens. You will learn the name of every flower. You will learn to feel the soil in your hands. You will learn what it means to create beauty instead of chaos. And perhaps, if you are very lucky, you will learn a fraction of the dignity that man possesses." He then looked at her friends. "As for all of you," he said, his voice like steel, "you are no longer welcome in this house. Ever." Epilogue. 3 months later. The sun was setting over the Okoro estate. The gardens had never looked more beautiful. Chief Okoro was sitting on his terrace, reading. He looked up and saw his daughter, Zola, walking beside Samuel. She was wearing simple work clothes, her hands covered in dirt. She was no longer pointing a phone at him. She was listening, her face rapt with attention, as Samuel explained the intricate process of grafting a rare rosed A. A new position had been created on the estate. Samuel was no longer just the head gardener. He was now the estate supervisor and horticultural consultant, a title that came with a significant raise and a new house on the property. But more importantly, it came with the respect he had always deserved. Zola looked up and saw her father watching. For the first time in a long time, she gave him a small, genuine smile. It was not the smirk of a bored, cruel girl, but the quiet, tired smile of someone who had spent a day doing honest work. The video of the pool party had never gone viral. It had been deleted, but the events of that day had created a change far more profound than any number of likes could ever measure. The quiet gardener had not only saved a life, he had planted the seed of a new character in the barren soil of a young girl's soul, and it was finally beginning to grow.